The film begins with a group of poachers stalking a pride of lions on the savannah in South Africa. They lay a trap for the lions, using a dead zebra as bait. When the lions gather around the carcass, the hunters emerge from their hiding place and open fire, killing several lions. However, their prize, the biggest male lion, manages to escape. The hunters are left with only the dead lions they managed to kill. Then the leader of the poachers gives 3 of his men an ultimatum: find the male lion or face death. After hearing that, the 3 hunters set off into the savannah, following the lion's tracks. They eventually come upon a spot where one of their own suddenly disappears without a trace. The other 2 hunters are left panicked and unsure of what to do. As they try to flee, one of the hunters is brutally attacked and killed by the male lion they were hunting. The remaining hunter, desperate to survive, tries to run but eventually becomes ensnared in a trap meant for capturing wild lions. Just as he thinks all hope is lost, the lion that has been stalking him pounces. The scene then switches to Dr. Nate Samuels, who was recently widowed, taking his daughters, Meredith and Nora, on vacation to his late wife's hometown, the Mopani Reserve in South Africa. The small plane ride to the reserve is filled with memories for Nate, who had visited the reserve years before with his wife. Upon arrival, they disembark and transport their luggage to a stopover for tourists and local residents. Not long after, there is someone named Martin Battles, a biologist and longtime friend of Nate, who arrives to welcome him and his family to the Mopani Reserve. After greeting Meredith and Nora, he takes them on a tour of the village where Nate's late wife, Amali, grew up. There Martin shares stories of his love for the natural beauty of Africa and his friendship with Amali, who was a photographer. He also reveals that he introduced her and Nate, who eventually fell in love and had 2 daughters. After a long journey, they arrive at Martin's house, where Nate and his daughters will stay for the holidays. Unfortunately, there is no Wi-Fi or cable, which disappoints Meredith and Nora. However, Nate tells them to embrace the opportunity for a fun wilderness adventure. As they explore the house, he shows his daughters some of Amali's work, including a portrait of her under a tree that particularly moves him. During dinner, Meredith confronts Nate about his lack of support for Amali's photography career, particularly during her battle with cancer. Then he tries to explain his situation at the time, but Meredith is angry and upset, leading her and Nora to leave the dinner table. Feeling frustrated and regretful, Nate turns to Martin for support and shares his guilt over his lack of time with his family. Martin advises him to try to rebuild his emotional connection with his daughters. The next day, Martin takes Nate and his daughters on a tour of the Mopani Reserve's restricted areas, showing them the beauty of the African savanna and the wild animals.
Oh my gosh, you're so cute!
When they continue on their journey, Martin plans to stop at an abandoned schoolhouse built for the children of miners. However, when the mine's output dwindled, the miners left, leaving the school deserted. Not far from the school, they meet Banji, a nature reserve officer tasked with tracking the movements of a lion pride in the area. Banji is watching over a lioness and her 2 male companions as they roam the area. When the lion roars, Meredith and Nora become scared, but Martin quickly calms them down. As they approach the lions, Martin's 2 male lions, which he had raised from cubs before releasing them into the wild, rushed towards him and embraced him affectionately. However, the lead lioness seemed agitated and distressed, her injured leg causing her discomfort. Then Martin quickly sprang into action, calling for the vet to come and tend to the lioness's injury. While they waited for the vet to arrive, Martin shared with everyone the alarming trend of wild animal poaching that has been on the rise lately. Rhinos, elephants, and even lions are being targeted for their valuable body parts, such as claws, fangs, and bones. Nora mentioned that she had heard of anti-poaching units that not only prevent poaching but also hunt down and capture poachers. Martin confirmed that the anti-poaching units were doing what was necessary to protect wildlife and nature reserves and halt the devastating poaching that had been occurring. As they drove through the nearby Tsonga community, Martin stopped to speak with some of the residents he knew, hoping to gather information about any recent poaching incidents in reserve. Upon entering the community, they found it eerily deserted. However, they were confronted with a grisly scene as they approached a cattle pen. The residents were all dead, with claw wounds that suggested they had been attacked by a lion. However, as they attempted to leave, he realized that the nearby hill's radio signal was being disrupted, making it difficult to report the lion's attack to the authorities. Soon after, Nate, determined to help Martin, also exited the car, instructing his daughters to stay inside. Then, a Tsonga man named Mutunde stumbled out from behind a bush, covered in wounds and mumbling incoherently. Then Martin instructed Nate to take care of Mutunde and protect the girls while he went to investigate the nearby forest. Hearing that, Nate quickly retrieved some medical supplies from the car, but despite his efforts, Mutunde's injuries were too severe, and he ultimately succumbed to his wounds. Meanwhile, Martin had made his way to the lake's edge and discovered lion footprints. As he stood there, a male lion emerged from the trees, causing him to take action and fire a shot to immobilize the animal. As Nate and his daughters tended to Mutande, they heard gunshots coming from the nearby forest. Concerned for Martin's safety, he rushed toward the woods to check on him. However, as he ran, the lion appeared and chased after him. Because of that, Nate raced back towards the car, narrowly avoiding the lion's attack. However, the lion relentlessly climbed onto the car's hood as Nate tried to escape. He was almost dragged out of the car when it came to a stop, but Meredith bravely took control, starting the car again and crashing it into a tree to shake the lion off. After the harrowing experience, Nate checked on his daughters to ensure they were unharmed and tried to calm Meredith, who was understandably panicked. Moments later, Martin radioed Nate via walkie-talkie, warning him to stay away. The lion was using Martin as bait to lure the others out, and he was sitting under a tree in the middle of the lake, trying to stop the bleeding from his legs after being attacked by the lion. He urged Nate to stay in the car for cover and assured him there was no need to worry. Unfortunately, the radio was out of range for contacting any help, so Nate decided to assemble a tranquilizer rifle with the assistance of his daughters. They couldn't just leave Martin there, injured and vulnerable. Via the walkie-talkie, Nate asked Martin to tell him his position in case the lion had left the lake. Knowing that Nate would be coming to rescue him, Martin reminded Nate to be vigilant and keep an eye out for any signs of the lion's presence, such as the movement of other animals or shadows. Other animals tend to quickly move away when they spot a lion, so any sudden movement or changes in the environment could indicate the lion's arrival. After Martin alerted Nate to his location, Meredith bravely set out to rescue him, but Nate tried to stop her. However, she was determined to help Martin. Just as she reached the hunter's tower, the rogue lion appeared from behind a hill, chasing after her. Then Nate tried to create a diversion to distract the lion, but he had a difficult time hitting his target with the tranquilizer rifle, missing his shots. He took cover under a car to avoid the lion's attack. Nora, who was still in the car, came to Nate's aid by stabbing a stun bullet into the lion's body when it attacked him again. Fortunately, the sedatives began to take effect, causing the lion to limp and walk away. Shortly after, Nate emerged from under the car and quickly contacted Meredith via walkie-talkie, instructing her to return to the car before the lion returned. Upon returning to the car, Nate immediately tended to Martin's serious wounds, administering first aid as best as he could. At that time, Martin had fainted from the pain, and they suspected the lion was responsible for the attack on the Tsonga community. They were relieved that the lion had been successfully sedated and paralyzed for the next few hours. However, their relief was short-lived when the lion reappeared on the hill, seemingly unaffected by the sedatives. The anesthetic that was supposed to paralyze the lion for hours had proven inadequate. As night fell, Nate reminded his daughters to stay in the car for their own safety, and they all tried to conserve their limited drinking water supply, knowing they would have to wait at least 20 hours for help to arrive. Then Nora reminded Nate that he shouldn't make promises he couldn't keep, as he had often done in the past. This comment sparked a heated argument between Nate and Meredith, causing Nora to become even angrier. She pointed out that they should focus on finding a way to save themselves from the lion's attack rather than fighting amongst themselves. As Martin began to stir from his unconscious state, Nora quickly gave him water. He shared his theory that the lion had gone rogue and was attacking humans on sight after poachers killed its pride, eliminating all of the members of its group. He warned Nate not to do anything reckless that could endanger his life, as it was impossible to fight a wild lion without weapons. Then Martin praised Nate for his actions thus far and told him that Amali would be proud of what he had done. Despite the dire circumstances, those words provided comfort and motivation for Nate to continue fighting for their survival. As the darkness enveloped the group, Nate and his companions tried to get some rest in the car. However, Nate was plagued by nightmares and woke up with a start. He confided in Meredith, who was also awake, about his love for Amali and apologized for any wrongdoings he may have committed against their small family. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, and the poachers arrived in a fleet of vehicles. Nate knew he had to act fast to prevent the night hunt and help his family, so he approached the poachers and offered them money in exchange for letting his family go. Then the poachers checked the car and discovered Martin, who they recognized as the anti-poacher responsible for the deaths of 3 of their own. In response, they decided to kidnap Meredith and Nora as hostages. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a lion appeared and attacked the poachers one by one, causing chaos and confusion. When the lion chased the poachers, Nate saw an opportunity to escape. He searched for the keys to the poachers' truck, but they were nowhere to be found. Desperate, he scoured the poachers' bodies, following the trail of their corpses until he reached the edge of a lake. Just as Nate was about to give up hope, the walkie-talkie he was carrying suddenly cracked to life, attracting the attention of the lion.
Can you hear me?
He scrambled up a nearby tree and used a snake to distract the beast. As the minutes ticked by, Meredith and Nora grew increasingly worried, as they had not received a response from him since their last communication. As the lion feasted on the body of one of the hunters, Nate took the opportunity to sneak away into the water. However, he was almost caught when the lion suddenly turned its attention towards him. Just in the nick of time, Nora honked the horn of a nearby car, distracting the lion and giving Nate a chance he needed to locate the keys to the truck. With the keys in hand, he quickly escaped, leaving the chaos and danger behind. Tragically, the lion, already drawn by the sound of the horn, managed to circle around the car and attack Meredith, wounding her severely. Then Martin quickly ordered her and Nora to escape, noticing that the car was tilting dangerously toward a ravine. He bravely tried to distract the lion, but his car plummeted into the ravine before he could. As the lion approached, Martin set off an explosion using the leaking gasoline, sacrificing himself to save his companions. Nate, who had heard the explosion in the distance, raced towards his daughters and Martin as fast as he could. When he arrived, he was relieved to find Meredith and Nora alive but heartbroken by the news of Martin's death in the car explosion. Despite the tragedy, he was grateful to have his daughters safe and by his side. The following morning, Nate and his daughters embarked on the journey back to Martin's house. They followed the same path they had taken before but eventually had to abandon the car and continue on foot when they ran out of fuel. As they approached an abandoned schoolhouse nearby, he used bandages and alcohol he found inside to treat her wounds. After taking care of Meredith, Nate searched the area for any weapons or means of communication he could use to call for help. Suddenly, he heard Nora's terrified scream as the lion appeared, following them to the schoolhouse. Then he rushed to her side and fired several shots to drive the lion away. He then led Meredith and Nora to a safer room and promised to return for them after he distracted the lion. Despite the danger, he was determined to protect his family and keep them safe. Moments later, Nate left the safety of the schoolhouse and began to lure the rogue lion away from the abandoned building. As he fought the lion, it seemed he might not make it out alive. However, luck was on his side when the pride's alpha male intervened and killed the rogue lion, allowing Nate to escape. As Nate retreated, he stumbled and fell unconscious. Fortunately, Banji arrived just in time to sedate the remaining lions and save Nate from further harm. As the movie ends, Nate is shown dreaming about Amali, who reassures him that everything will be all right. When he wakes up, he finds himself in a hospital bed, surrounded by his two daughters. Meredith and Nora tell him how they were saved by Banji and how proud they are of him for his bravery and determination. Despite their challenges and sacrifices, Nate's love for his family and his fierce protection of them have brought them all through to the other side. After some time, Nate and the others return to the preserve as a united front. They pose for a new photograph at Amali's favorite tree, honoring her memories and their bond. The film ends. The moral lesson of this film is that humans cannot conquer nature, but we can choose to respect and care for it. This film serves as a reminder to be wise and kind in our treatment of the natural world, recognizing that we are all connected and dependent on the earth and its inhabitants.